Cable is dead, and it's been replaced with streaming services. But over the past few years, we've been inundated with so many new streaming services that frankly, I've lost count. I mean, who even watches Paramount Plus? But I digress. The point is that I'm extremely curious as to how each streaming service is doing and what happened to cause this rat race that we find ourselves in today. What are the major players doing to distinguish themselves? And is there any real innovation going on? If so, what? It's Techonomics. Hey guys, it's Carlos, always trying to provide you with insight on technology and how it's affecting you and the world at large. Streaming services originally offered a great proposition in that you could watch most, if not all, of your favorite shows and movies in one place at an affordable price. Now, that isn't really the case anymore. Every studio is making their own streaming service and putting all of their properties in it, no matter how niche. And that just makes it so that you have to buy all the streaming services if you want to see all your favorite shows, which is just as expensive, if not more so, than cable. But let's get some context to understand how this all got started. Streaming services actually didn't sprout out from cable at all. They came from a totally different business altogether. It's only now, in hindsight, that you can see the similarities. What streaming actually came from was video rental, the OG being Blockbuster Video that was founded in 1985. The business model was simple. Blockbuster would buy a giant catalog of movies and TV shows, and you, the customer, could go into the store and rent them. Newer and more popular rentals would cost more, and so would keeping them longer. Netflix came in 1997 and totally revolutionized the space, adding a level of speed and convenience that had never been seen before by mailing it directly to your door. And funnily enough, Blockbuster actually missed an opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million back in 2000. A missed opportunity that would eventually lead to their downfall in 2010. Netflix, on the other hand, just kept innovating and did so again when they eventually released their streaming service back in 2007. Obviously, back then, the internet wasn't nearly as advanced as it is today. But as technology advanced and web development progressed, Netflix became a service that people actually wanted, which ended up being the foundation for the streaming service wars that we find ourselves in today. So let's go down the list of major streaming services and understand how successful they've been, how many users they have, and what their niche is. And though YouTube is technically on some of these lists because it's a video streaming platform, it won't be on this one because it isn't actually made for hosting movies and TV shows that people are actually paying to see. It's all user-generated content. Netflix is probably a good place to start, and I already explained how the streaming service got started in the first place. But what is truly impressive to see is their growth in both users and revenue. By 2014, they had over 50 million users, which quadrupled in just 6 years to be over 200 million as of 2020. Their revenue perfectly correlates with those numbers too, making 5.5 billion in 2014 and more than quadrupling to 24 billion in 2020. And just for comparison, Netflix was only making 1.3 billion in 2007 when their streaming service launched. Netflix now sits at the top of the hierarchy of the streaming services, and it's easy to see why. They invested tons of money into making their own studio so that they can make their own TV shows and movies that people would actually want to watch. And that content is diverse and continually coming out, so there is always something new for you to watch on Netflix. And to top it all off, they have a loyal consumer base that has made Netflix synonymous with streaming. Prime Video is another major player in streaming that started back in 2006, but back then it wasn't really a streaming service, it was more of a way to easily download videos that you had purchased. It also changed its name a lot, from Amazon Unbox to Amazon Video On Demand to Amazon Video, now to Prime Video. What really helps them out is that Prime Video is included with Amazon Prime, so their numbers are inflated a bit, leading to them having 142.5 million users as of 2020 compared to their 40 million in 2014. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to get solid numbers on the revenue coming in from Prime Video because it's just included with Prime, but now it's pretty easy to see that it's become a major factor in their success and why right now they're one of the major players in the streaming service wars. Now for one of the newest players, let's talk about Disney Plus. And it's easy to see that Disney is putting all of their resources into making this streaming service succeed, and that's obvious in that just 6 months from launch in November of 2019, Disney Plus had 26 million users. And fast forward just a little over a year from that point, and now Disney Plus has over 100 million users as of Q2 of 2021. Now, the streaming service is a little young to get solid numbers on the revenue and the growth, but considering they made $4.5 billion in 2020, it's obvious that they've become extremely successful, and that's not even considering all the growth that they've seen since then. But without a doubt, one of the major reasons for their success has been their giant library of children's content, which is a large and reliable consumer base. There are also a couple more streaming services, but they aren't nearly as successful as the ones that I've mentioned before. Like Hulu with 36.6 million users, but their hands are kind of tied because they've been owned by Disney since 2009, and obviously they wouldn't want to cannibalize their own upcoming streaming service. Then there's HBO Max with 44 million users, but they've only been able to get to that point by releasing their movies in HBO Max and the movie theaters simultaneously, which will obviously cut into their profits. There's also Apple TV that just passed 40 million users, but they're kind of in a catch-22 because their service was made to be used with their hardware, and that's not really convenient for all users. Then there's Paramount Plus and Peacock with 42 and 36 million subscribers respectively, and they just don't have the same amount of content as all the others, which has made their growth extremely limited. Suffice to say that the streaming space is now jam-packed with competitors, and obviously they're controlled by the likes of Netflix, Prime Video, and Disney Plus. The big question is that going to stay the same, or is there going to be an upset in the near future? It's great that there's a ton of competition, and frankly, we still don't know if the hierarchy in the streaming wars is gonna stay the same or gonna change. That said, there is a major criticism that has to be mentioned. If streaming services were supposed to be a replacement for cable, they've done a pretty bad job of it. That's because there are so many damn streaming services that if you want to watch all the shows that you really like, you have to get them all, which ends up being just as expensive, if not more, than getting cable in the first place. And to make things even worse, it's not like you can go back to cable and get all the content that you wanted, because now a lot of this content is exclusive to each of their respective streaming services. So at this point with streaming services, I think one thing is really certain. We're gonna keep seeing more streaming services popping up all over the place, and the decision is gonna be quite simple. Either you're gonna have to limit the amount of streaming services that you pay for, or you're gonna have to try to buy them all and end up paying more than you were when you had cable. Okay guys, thanks for watching another video. It's always really appreciated. Please hit that like button. It really does help with the algorithm. Also, comment down below on what your favorite streaming service is, and if you think there was one that I should have put in the video, please comment below why. As always, this is Carlos from Techonomics, over and out.